Well, hello, and again, I just want to apologize for the technical difficulties that we suffered today. You were supposed to be watching this recording as a live webinar, and unfortunately, due to some updates and things not syncing and reinstalling different software, I wasn't able to give you the experience that I wanted to today. So I've got this recording, but I do want to say I am profoundly sorry and make sure that you do get a great experience as we walk through this particular content. So let's dive right in. Here we go, empowering your pursuits. So thank you very much for joining me and watching this particular session. All right, my name is Clifford Morgan. I'm a leadership expert and an organizational psychologist. For those of you that are watching this and are seeing me for the first time, my story starts back in the military. I was what they call an airfield defense guard for a number of years, which is basically using the infantry skill set to defend air bases. And when I hung up my boots and rifle full time, I went and studied for 8 years to become a fully endorsed organizational psychologist. So I specialize in applying psychology in the world of work and helping leaders get the most out of themselves and their people in the workplace. And really helping them pursue high performance in that space. And I've been doing that in various different capacities for a number of years now. And so today we're talking about empowering your pursuit, the pursuit of your potential, the pursuit of your goals, and really reinvigorating those goals for 2024. It is now April. Can you believe it is that time already? We're now a quarter of the way through the year. And how are you going with the goals that you set back in January? You see, the research would tell us that 80% of people, the vast majority of people, have either lost track of their goals, they've fallen by the wayside, or they've stopped chasing them altogether. That's a large percent, 80%, that's the majority of people. And I want to ask, are you one of those 80%? Have you let the goals that you set back in January fall by the wayside? And if you are, no judgment there, all right? Because that's normal. 80% is the vast majority of people, and therefore it would seem that it's normal for people to set goals with the best of intentions at the beginning of the year and then lose track and lose sight of them. And, what if I was able to help you today to get back on track? How would it be if I was able to help you make a couple of small changes now that would help you build and maintain momentum throughout the year so that in December you can look back and you can have this great sense of satisfaction and fulfillment because of the achievements that you have made throughout 2024. That's what I want to do today. And some of you might be sitting there thinking and going, well, hey, this is goal setting. I've heard all this before. You write down your goals, you stick them on the mirror, and then you really believe with all your heart that they are going to come to fruition and the universe is going to move and make them happen. And it's not quite that, all right? There will be some things in here that you probably have heard before, but I guarantee you there's going to be things that you haven't heard. There will be things that you might have heard, but you will hear in a different way that will help resonate. And hopefully at the end of this, my aim is for you to walk away understanding a series of strategies, not only what the strategies are, but why and how they work so that you can implement them more effectively in your world. All right. And so, I'm super keen, right? I'm super keen. Those strategies are based on science. It's not just hocus pocus. It's not just, do a bunch of stuff and magically your goals will be achieved, right? I want to look at the science. I want to look at the psychology, and I really want to empower you to be more intentional about pursuing your goals. So as we do that, I want to say thank you very much for all of those who have put in some comments and some feedback in the registration process and asked some questions as well. I will be endeavoring to incorporate the answers to those questions that you've posed into the content of today's session. And if at the end of it there are any questions, I invite you to reach out. I'm happy to either answer those via email, to jump on the phone and have a quick chat with you as a result of today's session. All right. And so as we kind of dive in, I want you to stop and I want you to think about, what are your goals for 2024? What are the goals that you set in January? And just kind of ground yourself and remind yourself of what they were. Excuse me. And when I think about goals, and each year I set goals, and I set goals around the 5 F's. All right, we've got faith, we've got family, we've got finance, we've got fitness, and we've got fun. And so I generally, in each of those areas, I will set some sort of goal. And for this year, we as a family are talking about going for a trip to Canada in Christmas 2025, so next Christmas. And so financially, we've got some savings goals that sit around that. We've obviously got finance goals around our business as well. Fitness-wise, I want to do 20 overhand chin-ups. That's something that I am keen to do. And also for fun, this year I'm learning to juggle, just something out of the blue. Something will be interesting, learning a new skill, which is good for the brain. And so what is it for you? What are the goals that you have set? And as we go through this session, I want you to just pick one of those goals. And I want you to think about that particular goal. And as we discuss the different strategies that can help empower your pursuit, then I want you to think about, how would I apply this particular strategy for this particular goal? It just allows you to think about the application in a more specific and therefore meaningful way. And then once you've done it with that goal, I encourage you to sit down with all your other goals, both your personal goals, your workplace goals, goals with your team as well, and then think about, what are the strategies that are relevant and how can I apply those particular strategies to those goals. All right. So we all have goals. And as I was preparing for this session, I kind of realized that goals are a bit like rissoles. The meat patties, the rissoles that you get at the butcher. And you're kind of thinking, well, Cliff, where are you going with this? Well, everybody has them, right? But it's what you do with them that counts. And if you don't understand the reference, then I encourage you to go and watch The Castle, the classic Australian movie. And once you see that particular scene, then you'll get it, right? You'll have a laugh, you'll enjoy it, and you'll get the reference there. But the reality is, everybody does have goals. And just having a goal doesn't mean that you're going to achieve it, doesn't mean that you're going to increase your performance. The goal in and of itself is not going to change your world. It's what you do with the goal and the pursuit of the goal that is the important thing, because it's the pursuit that increases capability. It is the pursuit that increases performance. It is the pursuit and the action that you take that is going to help you achieve the result and become the person you want to be. And so we need to, the purpose of today is really around, how do we empower that pursuit, okay? And, before we jump into the strategies I'm going to share, well, we have to think about, well, why do people let their goals fall away? Why do people stop chasing their goals? And in reality, I think, there's, I've just got 6 reasons here that are coming. They're unclear. All right, they are unrealistic, they are uncommitted, unconsidered, unsupported, and un-FOM, all right, or unfront of mind. Or when you think about it, if they're an ungoal, you can't hit something that, if it's unclear, then you can't hit something that you can't really see, right? Or the process is unclear. If it's unrealistic, why are you setting a goal that you cannot achieve? If you're uncommitted, all right, when as soon as things get tough or you get distracted, then they're going to fall by the wayside. If they're unconsidered, you haven't actually considered what it takes to achieve that goal. And and are you willing to make the sacrifice in time, energy, and effort? Then again, you're gonna, as soon as you start investing that effort and it becomes hard, you're going to fall away. If it's unsupported, all right, so the environment around you, the structures that are around you, the people that are around you aren't supporting you in your goal, well, you're going to be sucked down to their level, or to what's normal for them, rather than rising above to achieve what you desire. And if it's unfront of mind, right, un-FOM, we just get sucked into the busyness of life, and we get so busy and we start doing things on because life travels so fast. We're on autopilot, right? And we're not actually thinking, we're not being intentional, and we just get sucked into the doing, as we've always done with the pressures of life and all those things. And we lose focus. Our goal is no longer front of mind, and so therefore we don't chase it. All right, it just kind of, we still want to get to it, but we're just not thinking about it, and therefore not taking the action that's required in order to achieve the goal. So there's some of the reasons that are there, and I want to ask you this question: what might be the reason behind you not achieving your goal so far, or not making the progress towards your goal as you would have liked? What's the reason that's stopping you, all right? And whatever the reason is, whether it's unclear, uncommitted, unconsidered, unsupported, unfront of mind, then the reality is, I want to remind you this, that you may have fallen off the bike, but you're not out of the race. I'm a cyclist. I enjoy cycling with my dad. And whenever I watch the Tour de France, the big cycling race, there is always cyclists who have a crash. Almost on every stage, there's some sort of crash. Now, the vast majority of the time, those cyclists that do crash, they get up and they keep continuing on in the race. All right. The only ones that don't are those that are so damaged they need to go to hospital because of the crash. Now, unless you are in hospital, my encouragement to you is get back on your bike and get pursuing your goals, because you're still in the race. All right. So look, let's get to these strategies I've been talking about. Now, I'm going to give you 7 strategies, right? 7 strategies to help empower your pursuit. And if you stick around, I might even give you an 8th bonus one. It sounds like a bit of a cheesy salesman there. Look, these are based on science. Not all 7 strategies might be relevant to you. I acknowledge that up front. But if I can guarantee you, if you take 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of these strategies and apply them, you're going to progress a whole lot more than you would without them. Okay, and so consider which ones resonate for you, and different strategies might be useful for different goals that you have. Okay, but I want to empower you to make the decision around how do you be the most intentional and effective in pursuing your goals. Okay, so let's jump into these 7 different strategies. Okay, if you've got goals that have fallen by the wayside already this year, well, the first thing you need to do, okay, is clarify. Pick your goal back up and give it a shake off, all right, and have a good look at it and get super clear in it. As I said before, one of the biggest reasons that people their goals fall by the wayside is they are unclear. All right, they're unclear what they want to achieve. They're unclear of the pathway to achievement. They're unclear of why they want to pursue that goal in the first place. And look, it's a bit like shooting a target, okay? So for me, I have a military background. I was an Air Force weapons instructor for many years. And when you're shooting at a target, you're looking, whether you're using a rifle or a pistol or some other machine gun or type of weapon, you're always looking at the target through the sights. And you need to have a clear picture of a target when you look through the sights. If it's not clear, then you can't see if you are aligned, and when you pull the trigger, the bullet is going to go where you want it to go. For me, I think back specifically when I was shooting a rifle. Now, I always wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but I couldn't do that because my eyesight's not great. All right, my right eye, if I cover my eye, everything is actually blurry. Now, I cover my left eye, everything's great. My brain is, which is amazing, compensates for that. But when I was aiming using my right eye, if the target was at 100 meters, that was okay. I could see that clearly enough to shoot well. But we would shoot out to 300 meters. And when it was out at 300 meters, it was all blurry. I couldn't actually see the target, and therefore I was putting the rifle where I thought it was and pulling the trigger and hoping for the best. Now, that's not what you want to do when you are shooting. It's not what you want when you are pursuing a goal either. Okay. Now, clarity brings accuracy. All right. You can't see something, or you can't shoot something unless you can see it clearly. Right. You can't hit a goal or chase a target unless you can see clearly what you are trying to hit or chase. And the other thing about clarity, right, is that it allows you to make adjustments. One of the things that we would do when we were shooting on the range was that when we would fire a round, we would look at where that round hit on the target, and then we would say, okay, cool, I've got to make an adjustment with my body or my breathing or any of the other variables that we would take into account when firing a weapon, and make adjustments so that we could get more accurate with our efforts. And it's the same with goals. Unless you have clarity on what you are chasing and what you are trying to achieve, then you can't make the adjustments necessary to ensure that as you pursue the goal, you're actually going to achieve it, right? So increasing clarity increases the accuracy. It increases the accuracy of your assessment of the goal. And so is it realistic? Is it important? It increases your accuracy of the process in order to chase it. What is required in order to chase this particular goal? If the goal itself is not clear, then you can't develop an accurate process and plan in order to pursue it. And also you can't determine what might stop me from achieving this particular goal. And so all of these things, clarity allows you to accurately assess all of these things so that you can then go and do it. And also allows you to accurately assess kind of what when you've achieved it, your success, which is really important. Now, when it comes to goals and these things, there's something that I often say, and the more specific you are, the more meaningful it becomes. All right? The more specific you are, the more meaningful it becomes. Now, it is actually really important. And when we think about the science and the study, the increase in goal clarity will increase your performance. And this is not just for you as an individual, whether it's you as a leader or you as an individual outside in your personal life. But the clearer your goals are in the workplace and the clearer they are for your team, the more likely they are to increase their performance and achieve them as well. You know, there's a specific study of 105 teams in the public service. And this is just one. There's many, many studies that I could have looked at. But this one's around teams and team performance. And the clearer their goal was, the higher the team performance. And that was both, they rated team performance there on efficacy or effectiveness and efficiency. And so the effectiveness was how well did they achieve their goal, but also the efficiency was how resource intensive was it, how quickly did they achieve it, and how many resources did they use to achieve it. And on both of those criteria, so achieving the goal and with effective resources, the teams performed better if the goal was clearer, right? So it was super important. And you say, okay, cool, Cliff. So what do we need to clarify? All right, if we're going to gain clarity around the goals, what specifically do we need to clarify? Well, gaining clarity, I reckon there's three different pieces, right? You got to get clear on the goal, you got to get clear on the outcome, and you've got to get clear on the process. And so the goal itself, right? As I said, the more specific you are, the more meaningful it becomes. Now, I reckon one of the easiest and well-known frameworks to help make you design a specific goal is the SMART framework. Okay, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frame. So make it super specific. Make sure that your goal is measurable. Is it achievable? Is it realistic? And what's the time frame and timeline that you've got on the goal? Okay, the more you do all those sort of things, it becomes super clear. Now, I'll often put PP on the end, so SMART PP goals, and one is positively framed. So what you want your goal to be is around something that you do, something that you move towards. Okay, you don't want your goal to be something that you stop doing, because people move towards what they focus on. And if you're like, I quit smoking, I want to quit smoking, I want to quit smoking, where's the focus? The focus is actually on the smoking, and so you're more likely you're using and reinforcing the brain circuitry around the act of smoking. Whereas if you say, I want clean and healthy lungs, and kind of your focus is around clean and healthy lungs, you're moving away from the smoking and you're moving towards what you want, the clean and healthy lungs there, right? So a bit of an example there. You also want to get clear on the outcome. Now, yes, we've got the goal, but what does that mean? What's the experience of achieving it? When I think about I ran a marathon a couple of years ago, and part of my training and my process for that was to think about and imagine what's the last kind of 100 meters look like, and crossing the finish line, and how good did I feel at the end of that and actually achieving the goal. And that can be a really powerful motivator. But the clearer you are around the outcome that you want to achieve and what the impact of the goal achievement is, then the more motivating it is, the more committed you're going to be. Okay. And then we want to get clarity around the process as well. And this is the plan. What's your plan to actually achieve the goal? All right. We've got to break it down into steps, and we've got to make sure that we are super clear about what those steps are, and what we're going to do. And potentially, what are the contingency plans that we've got? What are the obstacles, and how do we make sure that we account for those in our plan? But the clearer the plan is, then the easier the execution becomes. I often say, if you can't clearly articulate what your plan is, you can't be intentional about following it, right? And so getting super clear on that, you increase the likelihood of you actually taking the action, doing the behavior, doing the thing that you need to in order to achieve the goal. So there's 3 areas around gaining clarity. And someone put in a question around, what do I do about limiting self-beliefs, right? And that kind of plays out here a little bit. One, getting super clear on the goal, and actually maybe you have to, when you're getting clear on the goal, you've got to break your big goal down into small goals, right? When you think about the outcome, how good that's going to be, that can be really motivating for you as well. And the process here is around breaking it down. And if you've got limiting self-beliefs, what you might need to do is actually break it down a little bit further than what you would, what someone who's really confident might. You're chunking it down into really small actions and really focused behavior chains and habits that you need to build. The smaller the habit, or the smaller the piece, the smaller the behavior, the smaller the action that you need to take, the easier it is, right? And so if you want to run a marathon but you don't believe that you can, well, maybe you break it down. The goal for you first is to be able to run 1K, 1 kilometer, and to be able to run 1 kilometer consistently at a specific time, right? And so what do you need to do? You break it down. Well, I've got to get my clothes ready. I've got to get, put my shoes on and have a drink of water before I go. So I'm actually going to set those up the night before. And then I just need to get out and start running. And I might run around the block and see how I go first. And if I only get around the block, and that might be 300 meters, then you know what, that's okay, but I've started and I've done that. And so you're really kind of breaking it down into little bits. Even doesn't matter what the limiting belief is, if you break it down small enough, you'll believe that you can take that particular action, right? We might be elongating the timeline and we might have a whole lot of little steps. Just focus on what you need to do to get started, break it down, and then as you get started, what you can then do is, okay, what's the next series of little steps? And then you achieve those. Okay, what's the next series of little steps? And over time, you build your capability, you build your confidence, you change your belief because you're demonstrating to yourself that you can actually do it and make a difference. So I hope that is helpful there. So I guess, I would ask, what area in terms of your goal that you're working with, what do you need to get clear on? Do you need to re-clarify the goal? Do you need to take some time to clarify what the outcome is? What's the experience you'll have in achieving it and what the impact is? Do you need to refocus and clearly articulate your plan to achieve the goal in a greater level of clarity? What is it for you? And this is super important because what you'll find is that the more clarity you have around the goal, the outcome, the process, it will enable all of the other strategies that we're going through, okay? I wrote an article recently around clarity is like a magnifying glass. It really does magnify the impact of all the other strategies that you have. So that's strategy one, clarify, clarify, clarify. We're going to jump into strategy number two, and that is to layer your motivation, all right? Layer your motivation. Now, if you have a single source of motivation for your goal, you can be derailed by a single source of interference. If you, however, have multiple layers to your motivation, it's going to take multiple levels of interference to stop you from moving forward and progressing towards your goal. And really, where we start when we talk about layering motivation is really clarifying purpose. And so I'll ask this question: what are your 5 whys? What are your 5 reasons for chasing this particular goal? All right. Now, and you think about it, and most people will, if they're thinking about their goal, yeah, well, why do I want to achieve? They'll articulate one. And that one is often the easy thinking. It's often, in a lot of cases, it can be, yes, very, very true and real, but the process of kind of identifying multiple reasons will, one, clarify your purpose, and you'll actually kind of do a little bit of digging, and you'll actually find the real reason, right, for you to chase this goal. And so it's clarifying that sense of purpose. But the other aspect to this, right, if you have one reason, you only need one excuse to stop you. And we're using the running example, right? And we sort of say, well, hey, yeah, I want to run a marathon. And your reason for doing that is, I just want to be fit and healthy. Okay, I want to take my fitness to another level so that I can be healthy. And then it comes to 4:30 in the morning and you're tired, and you're kind of like, yeah, I want to be fit and healthy, but I had a late night last night, so I'm going to give the run this morning a miss. And trust me, I had that when I was running the marathon, right? I experienced that. Anyone that has done any running can obviously relate to that particular scenario. But here's what happens if you've got 5 different reasons. That thought, I had a late night, all right, comes through, and then what goes through your head next is the second reason, all right, for doing that. And then you'll have to come up with a second excuse to counter that. And then if you've got 5, as soon as you counter it, the next thing that runs through your head while you're lying in bed is your third reason for achieving the goal. And then, if you are going to counter that, right? You've got to come up with another excuse. And if you've got 5 different reasons, you've got to come up with 5 different excuses for staying in bed. Now that actually takes effort, right? You've actually got to stop and think, and you've got to go, oh, well, so what's the counterbalance to that particular reason? And if you're putting effort into that, by that time you go, what are you doing, right? What are you actually doing here? And you sort of come on. I've got these 3 other reasons that I've got no counters for. I know that I just need to go and do this. Let's go and do it. That definitely worked for me, and it's worked with many of my different clients. And that may not be running, right? May be a lot of other different things, but having 5 reasons why really does increase your reason to do that. Okay, and as I said, it clarifies that purpose. All right? And without a real connection to purpose, you're not going to chase your goals. I remember I think it was the last year, I set a fitness goal of I wanted to do 100 burpees every day. And I was just kind of, there was no real reason for me selecting that goal. I sat back and I thought, okay, I've got to do a fitness goal. Remember the 5 Fs, one of them is fitness. So what's a fitness goal that I could have? I'll just do 100 burpees. I just plucked it out of there. There was no purpose attached to why I chose that goal. And so 6 weeks in, I was halfway through February, and I'd done 100 burpees every day until that point. And then I just got, you know what? Oh, I can't be bothered. I'm going to skip a day, and then I'm going to skip another day, and the goal just fell by the wayside. And really the underlying reason was there was no purpose attached to my goal in that space. And so when we think about this, I love this quote from Mark Divine, and it says, "Goals not tethered to a purpose are a wild goose chase, and a purpose without a goal is a fantasy awaiting regret." All right, and it's so true, right? From my own experience, and I'm sure for you as well. If you haven't clearly articulated the purpose to your goal, then it's it's going to be a bit of a wild goose chase, and it's going to fall by the wayside. 2 other things that you can do in order to layer your motivation, and that is attach a reward to the achievement of the goal and the outcome, and also a punishment if you fail and miss the mark. All right, these are not for everybody. You don't do that for every goal that you set, but if it is an important one and you are kind of motivated by those things, it can be a really effective way to motivate you to continue on. All right, and so I think back to a coaching program that I was part of when I was just starting out and learning. I was part of a business mentoring program, and every 90 days we would have a big goal that we had to achieve, and we attached a reward to achieving that goal, and there was also a punishment if we missed it. And I was foolish enough at one time to let the business coach that was running the program set my punishment for my goal, and that particular punishment was I would have to pay for dinner for everybody on the program. Now, given the number of people on the program, the places we were eating, I would have been up for about $3,000. How motivated do you think I was to achieve my goal that quarter? And glad to know that I did. All right, so what those goals and those rewards and those punishments are doing they are triggering different parts of your brain. Okay, the rewards are triggering the approach circuits in your brain. So these are the circuits that allow us to lean in, to actually engage with and take action. The punishment is really engaging the avoidance and the threat mechanisms within our brain as well. Okay, and so we can talk about in some of my other coaching skills training, I talk about how really what these are doing are activating your reticular activating system, which is your filter. And the brain is just looking for all the different pieces of information that then relate to your goal. Opportunities that you wouldn't be normally aware of or open to, or you just wouldn't notice them in your day-to-day life. You'll go, oh yeah, I should speak to that person because that's going to help me with my goal, and all those sorts of things. So that's all happening kind of in the subconscious with all of these things that you're doing. But really, when I start talking about this, what I don't want for you, all right, is to be sitting at the end of December and just thinking they're full of regret, right? Having fantasies that were, that you regret not chasing because you hadn't, layered your motivation and really anchored the purpose to your goal. So that's one thing. If you've got a goal, your next strategy, once you kind of got a little bit more clear on it, is really layer the motivation and anchor it to purpose. Okay. The next strategy is all about good habits. Build good habits. Okay. And this is really around breaking your process down into small, manageable chunks. Now, really, in order to achieve a goal, there's got to be a change of behavior. All right. I love the quote that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we actually sink to the level of our systems. And when we start thinking about habits and habit formation, it is simply systematic behavior change. And we're being systematic about the specific behaviors that we need to change, that we need to embed, that we need to consistently demonstrate in order to achieve the goal. And when we think about that, I like to use the analogy that forming good habits is like building behavioral pathways. All right. Because really what we're doing with habit formation is we're building neural pathways in our brain. All right. Now, when we build a neural pathway, what happens is the brain cells actually come together. They've got things called dendrites, right? And every time we use them, they start to form, all right, like this. And then we use them again and again. The more we form them, the tighter that they actually connect and get together. And so it's a bit like walking through the bush. If you look at the bush and no one's ever walked through there before, you walk through it for the first time, you build it, you can sort of see where you've walked. You will have broken some twigs and you'll have displaced some dirt and those sort of things. You'll have footprints that you'll be able to see. And so you can sort of see a pathway. Now, if you walk along that path in the bush every day, it becomes more defined, right? And eventually what you'll see is there'll be a dirt track that you walk. Now, if you start to get a group of people walking through that every single day, that path begins to widen, and you start then, riding a motorbike down it or a four-wheel drive down that path. It gets more and more defined. It gets bigger and bigger, and eventually, if you kind of bitumize that thing and create it into a highway, you can travel super fast down that in a car. Right? And that's kind of what happens when we build habits in our brain. We're building a new habit is building a new pathway, and the more that we embed that habit to us, the stronger that pathway is, the faster it operates, or the thoughts, the impulses, the actions that happen in our brain, and eventually it just happens automatically, right? And that's the habit part of it. And so, it still involves a choice. We've still got to make the choice, but that choice becomes so much easier because those pathways are built in the brain. So my question is, what are the habits that you need to build in order to achieve your goal, right? If your goal is running, then it might be putting your shoes out the night before to make it easier, and you just kind of get into that habit. And doing all that, right? Again, if you're having self-limiting beliefs, right, what's the habit you need to form? And maybe a really small thing, but if you kind of build the habits in, was okay, cool. Well, this is now easy. What's the next one? What's the extension of that, right? And then that becomes easy. So. Habits are great, right? And when we think about building habits and doing that well, there are three steps for you, right? Habit stacking. So find a habit that you already do. Okay, might be brushing your teeth. Let's say you wanted to start flossing your teeth, and because you've been to the dentist, I've been to the dentist this morning. So if you've been to the dentist and they say, really, you need to start flossing, well, are you going to floss at the kitchen dinner table after your meal? Probably not. The easiest way for you to build that habit is to put your dental floss next to your toothbrush. So when you go to pick up your toothbrush, which is a habit that you already do, it's something that you should do every day, then you see the dental floss and you pick up and you do the new habit, which is flossing, at the same time as the old habit, right? And so you're stacking habits on top of each other. You know, there was a point there where I wanted to kind of be a little bit more disciplined and start my day disciplined. And so I built the habit of doing push-ups. And once I'd kind of established that habit, well, there was another one that I had to do, which was around, I've got a bad back from the military and I needed to stretch and stay active. And so what I did is I put the stretches that I needed to do, I did them straight after my push-ups. And so I've kind of stacked those two habits on top of each other. And now I don't think every morning I'll get up and I'll do push-ups, I'll do my stretches to keep my core active, right? So habit stacking can be a really effective one. Find a habit you're already doing, add your new habit on top of that. Habit replacement is a different one. So like if you want to break a bad habit, then figure out when you do that and then figure out what's the new habit that I want to form, what's the behavior, the new behavior, and then whenever you would do your old habit, you do your new one. Okay, and so you're making an association between a certain trigger and a new behavioral response as opposed to the old one. The other one is visual cues, right? These are great to keep the habit front of mind and your goal, front of mind. So when I was building that habit of doing push-ups, what I would do is I wrote on a piece of paper, I wrote, are you disciplined? Do push-ups. And I put that piece of paper on the floor where I would get up out of bed every single morning. And so when I would get up out of bed, I would see that as a visual cue and I go, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing push-ups. Go and do the push-ups, right? Now, I don't have that sign anymore. I've removed that visual cue because I've built the habit already. But when you are building habits and ingraining them, it is really useful to have a visual cue, okay? So again, think about what are the habits that you need to employ in order to achieve your goal. You know, I love this quote from James Clear, who says, new goals don't deliver results, new lifestyles do. And a lifestyle is a process, not an outcome. Okay, so therefore we need to invest our energy into developing habits and new behaviors and making those new behaviors habitual in order to chase our results, right? And so James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits. If you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. The other one is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Both great books on habit formation and behavior change there. And the final thing that I would say on habits, right, is don't let the one-time excuse become a bad habit. So you might, you're doing a habit thing, you might miss a day. And don't beat yourself up over that, but don't let that one-time excuse become the bad habit, all right? Don't let a bad day become a bad lifestyle that is unfulfilling for you. So the next strategy as we move on from habits is to really establish the environment for success. Okay, establish the environment for success. Now the reality is that environments are what shapes us, right? We are all shaped by the environment we are in. And we want to make your environment, what you want to do is establish an environment that makes pursuing your goal easy and removes the barriers and difficulty. Okay, so if habit formation is important to you, then what are you doing to create an environment that makes your habits easy to do. Okay. You want your environment to help you, not hinder you. Okay. And so when we think about it, just how powerful environments are, the analogy of water comes to mind, because water at room temperature, in a room temperature environment, is a liquid. When we change the environment, we put it in a solid, in a freezer, it becomes a solid. It completely changes the nature of the water. And if we change that environment again and put it on a stove and apply heat, then it becomes steam, right? And there are some very powerful things that they can all do, given the different outcome we want to apply that water. But water changes based on the environment that we're in, and we will be changed by our environment too. So you think about, well, how do we change that environment? I encourage you to consider, what are the physical changes that you need to make? So and the virtual changes and the social changes, right? As I'm preparing for this, they're the three that really come to mind, right? So physical, what is your physically environment? What can you add or take away from your environment in order to, and this is kind of the workplace, the office that you're in, right? Or at home. This is where what you want to do. I love this quote from Keith Abraham. He says, what you want to do is feed your focus and starve your distraction. So first of all, the place that I would start is, what are the distractions that you have in your workplace? And remove them. Just get them, put them out of sight, take them, put them in a different room, get rid of them if you can. And what are the things that would really help you focus, all right? And focus on your goal, focus on your work. And so remove those distractions. I know for example, let's say we want to increase some sales. We want to help people take action in order to hit sales targets. One of the things that you could do from a visual cue perspective, and also encouraging thinking, is you could physically, and I've seen this done in multiple places, is put the sales process up on the wall. Okay, and we kind of have columns on the wall, whether it's on a whiteboard or I've seen it done with tape, and you actually say, okay, where are our clients, and let's move them along for each of the 8 stages in the sales process, and then we've got kind of sales quotas up on the side of the wall as well. And so you're making a physical change, you're adding something to the environment that physically allows people to keep the goals front of mind, so that they are taking action, right? I mean, we can talk, there's a whole lot of stuff around the visual tracking and measuring of goals. When I wrote my book, which I'll talk about later, one of the things that I did is to motivate me was to break down all the chapters. And so what I did was, if we want to think here, when I was struggling for motivation, I literally just drew this on the wall, and I broke down all the chapters here, and then as I wrote a chapter, I was crossing it off, right? And I was doing this, and I could see my progress, and that was really motivating. So there's an example of something simple that you can do to change your physical environment in order to increase focus there. You think about the virtual environment. One of the things we want to do is make the behavior that we want, that's going to help us get the goal, easy, and what we want to do is make the old behavior hard. Okay, so what you might do is think about your file structures on your computer. If there's something that you want to do, let's say you want to track your goals. You want to make tracking your goals easy. So if you're using an Excel spreadsheet to track your goals, you put the Excel spreadsheet on your desktop, right? And you move all the other files, so it's kind of sitting there by itself and stands out. That's a virtual environment change that you could make. And then think about the social environment as well. The reality is, the people that are around us will have a massive influence on us. And if the social influence is, not going to help you achieve your goal, then we've got to ask how committed we are to the goal. And if it's really important, we're really committed, then we might have to make the social sacrifice of spending less time with those particular people and finding more people who are supportive to hang around with. We've got that quote, you'll be the sum total of, your five closest friends. And so you finding people who are with you can be a really important social environment change. I know when I was training for my marathon, I found a group of runners that I would run with every week. So I've got social support because nobody else in my family or friendship circle close to me was a committed runner. So find the people, find the social support. When we think about your environment, whether it is physical, virtual, or social, really what you want to think, what's the change that I need to make in my environment that's going to make the behavior change that's required for achieving my goal easy? Okay, does the environment support the behavior, the action that I need to take in relation to my goal? I love this quote from W. Clement Stone. He said, "Be careful of your environment that you choose, for it will shape you, and be careful of your friends who you choose, because you will become like those." All right. So again, remove the obstacles. All right. Use visual cues. And also curate your content, all right, or your consumption. So when we think about the environment as well, what are you listening to? What are you watching as well? Are you listening to things that are going to motivate you towards goal? Are you listening to podcasts that help you learn about the goal and that sort of thing, right? If you want to be a better leader, are you watching and listening and consuming leadership material? If you want to be a better runner, are you actually watching and listening to things that are going to help you be a better runner, right? Curate your content and your consumption there can be really beneficial. So, the question that I would ask is, what are the changes in your environment you would need to make in order to actually achieve your goal? You may want to stop the recording each time I ask one of these questions and actually spend 5 minutes thinking about that, write it down, okay? And figure out what the answer is before watching the rest. Let's jump into the next strategy here is conduct a pre-mortem. So most people would know what a post-mortem is. It's when something has gone wrong. We would we do a bit of an analysis and a study and see what is it that went wrong. Post-mortem in terms of the coroner is how do we let's figure out what the cause of death was. Post-mortem in a project is let's figure out the cause of death of the project, right? And so often we would do that if something goes wrong. What a really effective strategy is, one of the most effective strategies, but one of the most underused strategies in the workplace, is conducting a pre-mortem. So before you go and chasing your goal, before you start the project, before you start the engagement with a client, conduct a pre-mortem. And that's where you sit back either by yourself or with your team. It's a super effective strategy with teams, is to sit there and go, if at the end of this project, or if in 12 months time we were to fail, all right, it actually, it bombed, right? What would be the most significant reasons why this failed? Okay, and think about that. A really powerful strategy. It's a bit like having a crystal ball and kind of gazing into the future. It engages your imagination, right? But in a really focused way. And what it actually does is it builds strategic thinking. It builds possibility thinking, but in a targeted way. And once you build possibility thinking and strategic thinking, you can then use those skills and capabilities for other things as well. And really what it enables you to do is, let's say we identify 3 specific things that are going to stop us from achieving our goal. Well, then what you do is you can build contingency plans. All right, contingency plans for if this happens, we can do that, or you can change your process to make sure that one of those things that might go wrong doesn't happen. Right, it mitigates the risk straight away. But you're thinking about it before it happens. In the military, we had this concept of actions on. So whenever we were doing a mission, excuse me, what we would do was, as we give the mission orders, we would state, if this anticipated bad scenario happens, this is what our set of actions on would be. So we had actions on ambush. If we're patrolling through the bush and we got ambushed by the enemy, what we would do is everybody would automatically face outward, put rounds down range, move to cover, and then move to an extended file facing the enemy, waiting for the command to assault the enemy position. Now, no commands were given to anyone. Everybody just did that automatically because we were trained. It was a standardized, trained, predetermined response to a specific anticipated scenario. And conducting a pre-mortem allows you to do that. What's the anticipated scenario that's going to stop me? What's my predetermined response to be able to do that? Okay. So these are some of the things that you can do, right? So what do? Well, it allows you to mitigate risk. You might build a new habit, right? You might make a change to your environment in order to mitigate those risks that you identify in a pre-mortem. You might develop a set of actions on for you and your team. If this thing happens, then we know what we're going to do. And it really does build your confidence in that space. Okay. I love this quote by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner that we actually just lost. He died this week. And the pre-mortem has two main advantages. It overcomes groupthink that affects many teams once a decision appears to be made, and it unleashes the imagination of knowledgeable individual in a much needed direction. Okay, so it's a really powerful strategy, and I encourage you, don't just use it for the goals that you've got now, but what I'd encourage you to do is whenever you start a project, whenever you take on a big new engagement, sit down and conduct a bit of a pre-mortem. Again, whether it's by yourself, whether it's with your team, super effective strategy there, right? I'd encourage you to do that. Right? Sit with your goals and sort of say, well, if I failed at the end of the year and I failed to achieve my goals, what are the most likely reasons for that? And what am I going to do to stop that? Visualize, visualize, visualize. So visualization is an amazing tool. And this is where people often go, well, if I just sit and I believe and I visualize, the universe is going to make it happen. And that's not the case, okay? Definitely not the case. It's a bunch of hocus pocus. But here's the science behind visualization. The reality is that when you visualize something, you use the same neural circuitry in your brain that you would if you were doing it physically for real, okay? So when you mentally rehearse something, you use the same circuits that you would if you were physically conducting the action and the behavior and the activity. And so in that way, it strengthens the neural pathways we were talking about before. It has some really amazing effects, right? It's used a lot in sport, and elite athletes will visualize their goals, their processes, the races that they run, and all those sorts of things. So there's research out there that shows that simply by visualizing doing physical activities, the muscles that you visualize using actually become fatigued in doing that. You're not using the muscle, but because you are rehearsing it in your head, the muscle gets tired. All right, so like that's actually amazing research. But it's not just for physical activity, and it's not just for fitness related stuff. There's some great research here. This study I'm looking at right now is Marin and Latham back in 2000. There was three different groups that received communication skills training. So this is leadership training in the workplace. And the three different groups, one, they simply set goals, all right, around the application of their leadership training, their communication skills training. There was a group that did visualization. All right, so they didn't set specific goals per se, but they visualized using the skill. And then there was a group that both visualized and set specific goals. And what they found was that in both cases where visualization was used, the level of efficacy, like the belief in their ability to use good communication skills, increased, and so did the communication skills, right? So here's what happened: the visualization increased efficacy, which actually increased commitment towards the goal. Okay, and the higher the commitment, right? Obviously, the higher the skills that were practiced, the more the communication skills were developed. All right, and when we talk about better communication skills and demonstrating communication skills, this was not people saying, "Oh, I feel more confident." This was other people around them that were being communicated to were making the assessment. Yes, they've definitely improved their communication, right? So visualization has a really important kind of part to play when it comes to achieving goals. So it's a bit like being in a simulator, right? The drivers, F1 drivers, they'll never step onto the race course for the first time on the race. They will sit and they will go through simulators and practice driving, and it's exactly the same. You're just doing it. The brain is amazing. God's given us an inbuilt simulator to use to practice all the stuff that we need to. So we need to make sure that we use that. All right. So what do we? How do you visualize? How do you visualize well? Well, I reckon we visualize the goal attainment, right? Visualize the outcome, visualize achieving the goal. And this is where getting super clear on it helps, because when you are clear on it, it's easier to visualize, right? So clarity, remember I said clarity enables the other strategies. This is how clarity, getting super clear on the outcome, helps you visualize the outcome, and that's really motivational. When you're visualizing how you would feel and you're visualizing the experience you would have, how others might feel is a really important motivating factor as well. So imagine, put yourself in other people's shoes when you achieve that goal as well. And so that's really important, and it also boosts commitment. So boost motivation, boost commitment, right? As well. That's what the research is telling us. And then imagine kind of you might want to imagine goal failure. For some people, this, particularly if they're wired in an avoidance way, imagining how bad it would feel if you fail to achieve the goal can be a really important driver as well. Now, you don't want to spend all your time doing that, because again, you move towards what you focus on. But you might want to spend some time imagining what it would feel like to fail, and then spend more time what it would feel like to achieve your goal. Right? Imagine the obstacles that you might face, and imagine yourself actually doing or responding to the things that go wrong. And again, this is kind of the actions on that we were just talking about. Visualize going through that. I remember talking to Matt Hall, the world champion air race a pilot who flew planes through tracks, racing them. He would talk about visualizing the contingency plans if there was a failure of the aircraft, right? And he's pulling 9Gs and something goes wrong with the air. He will visualize doing that a lot, because you can't practice that because it's incredibly dangerous, but he wanted to make sure that he knew what he was doing, so he'd spend a lot of time visualizing, how do I overcome the obstacle when I'm traveling at 300 k's an hour through the track, right? And the other one is visualize the behavior and the habits, and this is something that you can do. Again, going to bed, right? If you want to build a habit like I was around what you do first thing in the morning, and for me that was push-ups. So talking about that as an example. And what you can do is you can visualize doing the push-ups in the morning. And so when you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like the last thing you visualized was doing push-ups. It makes doing the push-ups the next day easier as well. So visualizing habits and behaviors as part of the process of the goal becomes really important as well. So, my question would be, what is it that you need to visualize? And if you want to build visualization in as a consistent habit, something that you do, I encourage you to think about, well, how do I make visualization a habit, right? When would I do it, and kind of stack the visualization onto something that you're already doing to make it easier. And the final one here is access accountability, right? We all know you can't have a conversation about goals and goal setting without accountability. We all have people that we could use as accountability partners. But the reality is that so many of us don't. And depending on how you use them, depends on what they can be like. They can be like a wingman who gets in there and does it with you. They can be like a cheerleader who just encourages you from the sidelines. You could have a bit more of a coach type accountability, who's kind of yelling out just instructions and kind of directing you and giving you some hard truths and feedback that nobody else will give you. And you might also have a bit like the angel on the shoulder, right? You know how you see in the cartoons where you've got, devil on one side and an angel on the other. And so you might have someone acting a bit like your conscience. And so when you don't do something, they're like, well, you really should be doing this, and those sorts of things. So again, different types of accountability that you can access. But really, when you think about accountability, and in this case, accountability for goals, really you're kind of engaging in some way. And again, depending on what that accountability looks like, will engage different circuitry in your brain. At some part, there's we're engaging the avoidance mechanisms in our brain as well, because we don't want to let people down, or we don't want to look bad or be judged by the people that we are using as our accountability partners, our friends, the people that we respect, because we didn't do what we said we were going to do, right? Or if we're using kind of the wingman style, where they're getting in and doing it with us, it's kind of like, well, hey, that makes the process more enjoyable, and so I want to do that. And then therefore it's the approach type mechanisms are being used in our behavior as well. I love this quote by Bob Proctor. He says, accountability is the glue between the commitment and the result. All right, we can be committed to something and still not achieve our result, but it's accountability for doing, following the process, that actually glues those two things together, which is really important. I think about this, a lot of us sort of talk about, well, how do we make goals effective? Here's one particular study that's out there, and it looks at a group that didn't have written goals. All right, and they were they got 4.29 right there on the scale. And they compared that with a bunch of other groups. And so we've got the people that had written goals, they were much more likely to achieve those goals. People that didn't specify the goal but wrote down the actions would take. So they wrote down the plan without the goal. Interestingly, they were less likely than those that had written goals to actually achieve it. But then we look at the commitment to a friend. So this is just saying to someone, I'm going to achieve this goal. And that again increases the likelihood of achieving the goal. But the most significant one is the one that had progress reports. They were consistently talking to their accountability partner and saying, here's how I'm going. And the accountability partner was coming to them and asking them, how are you going? Right? And so they're having that conversation around progress. And so that's where you get the most, you increase the chances of achieving your goal, in the most likelihood there. I love this particular quote by John Lemmy. He says, accountability separates wishers in life from the action takers that care enough about their future to take account for their daily actions. And do you want to be a wisher, or do you want to be a winner? Right? And that's the question you've got to ask yourself. And accountability is one of the strategies to ensure that you win, right? So share a commitment with friends, report your progress and discuss your progress regularly with them. And then what I encourage you to do is incorporate them into celebrating when you do achieve that goal, whether it's going out for coffee, going out for dinner, buying yourself a nice bottle of whiskey and sitting down and have a drink. I don't know, whatever you're into, but celebrate with your accountability partner. It makes the goal achievement much more meaningful. So that's strategy number 7. All right. And so just to summarize, what are the 7 strategies that in order to empower your goal that we've covered today? Clarify your goal. All right. Layer your motivation in. Break the process down and build good habits. Change the environment to support your goal pursuit. Conduct a pre-mortem, visualize the process, the outcome, and achieving the goal, and then access accountability in there. So they are the 7 strategies that I wanted to share with you today. And my question is, which one? Which one for you is, or which 2 or 3 do you think resonate the most? As I said, not all 7 strategies are going to be relevant for you pursuing your goals. But what I want to do is make sure that you identify which of those, which 2 or 3 of those are the most valuable to you and how you're going to implement those. Okay, what I'd actually love you to do is reach out and reply to the email that gives you this particular link and let me know. All right, send me an email. Which of the strategies is the most relevant to you? Because I'd love to hear. All right. And if you're really interested and want to know more about goal setting and achieving goals and all those sorts of things, well, look, in my book, The Coaching Leader, I have a whole chapter that's dedicated to goal setting. This is all about coaching skills and equipping leaders with coaching skills to be more effective leaders and develop their team while they lead day to day. And a big part of that is helping yourself as a leader set your own goals, but also helping your team using coaching skills to help set your goals and then pursue your goals. So if you're interested in reading that particular book, then I'd encourage you to go to cliffordmorgan.com.au. It's the easiest way to purchase the book. If you want an ebook version of that, you can purchase that through Amazon. And while you're at the website, if you think, hey, Cliff's awesome, he's dynamic, and I've really enjoyed this session, I'd love for him to come and speak to my team, well, you can check out the speaking page on the website as well. I am what they call a certified speaking professional, okay? A member of the Australian Professional Speakers Association. And so it just kind of, shows the quality that is there. All right, I'd encourage you, if you have any questions from the session today, please send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out, send me a message through LinkedIn if that's your preference. But I'd love to answer your questions if you have any about goals and how to empower them. So please reach out with those there. And, just to sum up and wrap this session up, I always think it's always important to remember that what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. The reality is that the whole reason that we set goals in the first place is not to achieve results, but it's actually to become better people. And I believe that if you're watching this, you have so much potential that is ahead of you. And I would encourage you to really go and set the goals and pursue them this year, not just to achieve and feel successful, but to become a better version of yourself. I'm a big believer that really leaders should be leading in a way that transforms people into better versions of themselves. So I hope that this session is able to do that for you. And finally, one last quote, again from W. Clement Stone. He says, no matter how well planned your goal is, it will always remain a pipe dream unless you pursue it with gusto. So hopefully I've given you a number of strategies today that will help you be able to build your momentum and maintain that throughout the year so that you can pursue your goals with gusto, become the person and the leader that you need to be. All right, until next time, lead well.